Hello, this is FlippedHarber for Precalculus. In this video we're going to talk about parabolas. Now the objectives for this lesson are to find the equation of a parabola, to graph parabolas, identify the vertex and the focus. Maybe those are some things that you are used to talking about with parabolas. We're also going to talk about something that you haven't probably heard about, and that's called the directrix of a parabola. And we'll talk about the axis of symmetry for a parabola. Our outline for this video, we're going to talk about the equations of parabolas. We're going to start with something that you're very used to, move on to something that you might not be very used to, but it should seem very familiar. And then we're going to move into a whole new way of writing the equations for parabolas. Now, this new way is going to feel a little bit weird, but it's very, very handy for identifying the vertex, the focus, and the directrix of parabolas. And then we'll talk about a process to finding the equation of a parabola given a graph or given some points on that parabola. Now, you're probably very used to seeing the equation of a parabola like this on the screen. Y equals x minus h squared plus k. Now, that's going to create a very typical parabola. It's going to have its vertex at the point hk. Very used to that, very used to seeing the vertex at the point h comma k, and this would probably go ahead and open up since everything is positive. So very, very used to this. This really should not cause you any heartache or pain. If we transition a little bit, you might have seen this as an equation for a parabola at some point. Looks very, very much like what we just saw. Our vertex, that is the kind of lowest value to the parabola, or the highest value, is still at the point h comma k, so there it is. But big difference to this one, since it's x equals and then the y is squared, this is going to be a parabola that opens to the right. So you didn't talk about this a whole lot in Algebra 2. Why didn't you talk about it a whole lot? It's not a function. So it doesn't pass this vertical line test. Well, now that's a good reason not to talk about it. But this is precalculus. We're not going to exclude these things just because they don't pass the vertical line test. We're going to embrace these, we're going to bring them into the fold, and we're going to talk about them with our other parabolas. Alright, so here are the new equations for parabolas. Now we're really trying to embrace these parabolas that open left or right. We're not trying to talk about them in any special way. So these equations look a little bit different. Probably a big difference, one that you're not used to seeing, is this k value with the y. Now notice, not only is that k value with the y, but it's y minus k. Instead of seeing that plus k, because we've moved it back over with the y, it's now minus k. So all of these equations, all of these parabolas, still have the vertex at the point h comma k. That's something that we can hold on to from our past. Now, another thing that we're not used to seeing is this a value. That a value right there that we see all the way down is going to help us to identify the focus of the parabola and the directrix of the parabola. Now you might not know what those are. I'll tell you. Okay, it's just going to take me a little second. I want to talk about some other features of these graphs before we move on. Some other features of these parabolas. Now these equations right here where the y is squared, that's what tells me that these graphs open either left or right. Now how do I know if they open left or right? Well, look for the minus sign. If you've got that negative right there, that one is going to open left. So this one right here is going to open left because of that negative. And then looking at the ones that we're a little more used to where the x is squared, we know which one opens up or down. Again, looking for that minus sign. If you see that minus sign, then that means that it's going to open down. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the vertex, something that you're used to, the focus, maybe you've never heard of that before, and the directrix. That's something you've probably never heard of when talking about a parabola. Now, this picture helps us talk about the true definition of a parabola. A parabola is the curve of points that are equidistant. Now, that's just a fancy word that means equal distances. The points that are equidistant from a focus, that's this point right here inside the parabola, and a straight line. This is the directrix. This straight line is the directrix, and it helps to define the parabola. So it's something that we want to be able to identify. So how do we identify it? Well, if we look back at those equations that we just saw, those A's that we saw in the equation, that A is the distance between the focus and the vertex. So that's our value A right there. Well, since these points are equidistant, that means that this is also A. So both the focus and the directrix are A units away from the vertex. Now that really makes it easy for us to identify the vertex and the focus. Now, let's look at those equations again. These equations where it opened left or right, now that means that our directrix is going to be a vertical line. So we have a vertical directrix, and that means that that vertical line should be x equals, oh, let's use the letter B. X needs to equal some number. That's how we talk about a vertical line, is x equals some number. For these down here, our directrix is going to be a horizontal line. So we have a horizontal directrix here, and that means that it's going to be a line like y equals b. Now, if we have a vertical directrix, that means that our parabola is opening left or right. Obviously, if it's opening to the right, that means that the directrix is to the left of the vertex. If the parabola is opening to the left, that means that the directrix is to the right. Pretty obvious. Okay, so let's talk about finding the equation of a parabola. So we give you a graph or we give you some points. Then what we need to do, first of all, is just choose the equation based on which way the parabola opens. If it opens left or right, we know that the y is squared. If it opens up or down, we know that the x is squared. Identify where the vertex is. That's always one of those points that they give you. Remember that that vertex is your point H, comma, K. Now remember, we put that K with the Y, so it is now Y minus K, and it has always been X minus H. Identify the focus or the directrix to determine the A value. Now how are we going to do that? Well, they're going to tell you a point. Let's go back to this picture here. They're going to tell you a point on the parabola. Now this has a funny sounding name, but if I draw a horizontal line right through the focus and I connect these 2 points here, this line is referred to as the lattice rectum. And when they tell you a point on the end of the lattice rectum, let's say that they give you this point right here, well, that point is also A units from where the vertex is. So now we might have to do a little bit of math. So it's going to be A units above where the vertex is, or A units below. But that's going to let us identify that A value. Now, once we've identified all of this, once we've chosen our equation, once we've determined where the vertex is, that's our H minus H comma K, once we've identified where the focus is or where the directrix is to determine our A value, then we just plug it all in and we're done. So really not that difficult. We're all done. So I'm not going to say it. You asked me not to say it. I'm not going to say it. Get to work.